Welcome to the first episode of My Midland. I'm Erin Bailey, your host, the Public Information Officer for the City of Midland, and today I'm joined by none other than Mayor Patrick Payton.
Good morning, Erin.
Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Good to be with you.
We're going to start off. We'll get right into it.
All right. Good to go.
You've been mayor for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning and your campaign and everything, what made you first want to run for mayor of Midland?
Well, really, I just have a heart for this community, and you would hopefully hear that from everybody. And didn't have any grand plans to run for mayor, but I had just a number of people that would come up and say, would you run for mayor? Would you consider running for mayor? And my mode of operation was just to keep listening to see if there was support. And it just kind of turned into a small movement. And then I decided, well, I really didn't have any political aspirations. And I'd done a podcast right after I retired from Stonegate. And I said, I'm not going to run for public office, but just seemed like it was the thing we needed to do. My wife and I talked about it. She said, well, actually, let me back up. I made a list of 7 reasons not to run one evening and took it to her. She was sitting in our living room of our house, and I gave it to her, and I said, here's my 7 reasons not to run. And literally, she looked at it for about 5 seconds, and she handed it back to me, and she said, you know you're supposed to run. So we made a few phone calls, and that was the beginning of it.
The rest is history.
Yeah, so everybody can blame my wife. So.
But now you're a year and a half in,
Yeah.
Which arguably was the hardest year and a half for any mayor. Looking back over that time, what stands out to you?
Wow, there's so many things, Erin, that have stood out. I think, January and February were just exciting months. We had several new council members, and everybody was getting their feet wet, and the economy was looking up, and the industry was up, and we were all excited about really just how do we deal with all the opportunity. And probably the most memorable week for me was that week in March when on a Monday morning the industry shut down, the oil and gas industry shut down. By the end of that week, not only was it rumors from China, but now all of a sudden we're getting phone calls from the doctors and the hospital. We've got an issue, and it's this COVID issue. And then the memories just all go together. You think about calling my kids and my family members saying, maybe you should go to not the hospital, maybe you should go to the grocery store and get some water. And then within a month, we're out of water. The city's out of toilet paper. No one knows what's going on. A sense of fear is starting to set in. I issued, I think, the first emergency declaration that had ever been issued in the city of Midland. Then we're talking about shutting the city down. The streets become ghost towns. When you talk about it, even today, talking to you, and you look back, you think, did that really happen? And you were afraid to go to the grocery store, restaurants weren't open. So really that stands out. And how do we deal with this? And a council who's never been through this before.
Yeah.
And, we've all been through natural disasters where you have 2 or 3 days, or maybe a week, where you're okay, it's over. But this just kept going, and it kept going. And through the year, the escalations, but probably the highlight for me, if you can say there was a highlight throughout the COVID issue, was something we were talking about before we went on air, the unified command team.
Yes.
The way our county and the hospital and the city and the school district and the health department really all came together and just hunkered down and said, okay, how do we handle this together? And the encouraging piece to that was, I think as a city, we did a fantastic job of navigating the extremes on all sides and just picking a path down the middle. And I think the evidence has shown that was the right path to choose. It was a hard path because people were scared, or people were mad, or they were mad and scared, or scared and mad. So our council did a great job. Our city staff did a fantastic job. And now we're sitting at a place literally today where maybe we're turning a corner and we can start planning on some bigger things. And in that same vein, another thing about the year was the tragedy of losing our city manager, and Courtney, who had retired and hopefully got to spend some time with his family. But that was a sad incident for everybody involved. He'd been here for so long. And, you just go down the year and there's very few things you can look back on and say, well, that was great.
Yeah.
And so,
few and far between.
Yeah, there just weren't that many. So, wow, just to sit back and think, it's been about a year and a half. It went by really, really fast.
Yes.
And I think because we were all just churning so intensely on all of it.
Did you have any former mayors reach out to you? Obviously, you had no one had ever been through that, especially you. Yeah. Did anyone reach out and offer you advice or?
No. I had a lot of support from former mayors for the course we were all taking, but no one could give advice. Mm-hmm. No mayor in the country could give advice.
Yes.
Quite frankly, there was no advice to give. Even a mayor from Houston who might have gone through hurricanes. Yeah, you had emergency management experience, but you didn't have a year's worth of emergency management. So we were all writing a new script every day.
And going back, knowing what you know now, mm-hmm. looking back over that year and a half, you just took office. Is there something that you would tell yourself?
Don't run for office. No. I think someone taught me years ago when the things are really intense, when times are really tough, when emotions are really high, the most important thing you can do as a leader is stay as calm as you possibly can and try not to contribute to the panic on either side. And I think we as a council and as a city did a good job of, I said this several times already, but steering a middle path, not getting too excited or too angry, and just showing people, okay, we know where we are. Let's not do anything too fast. Some people may say that we tended to be a little reactive or slow to react, but I wouldn't do it any differently. If a question comes up, would you change anything? It's good to look back and say, no, I don't think we would. I don't think we went too slow. I know we didn't go too fast, and it's yielded benefits. Even when it came to the outcry to shut the city down, the mm-hmm. shelter in place. You saw some cities in Texas doing that just immediately, but without any context of where you were and what your culture was like and what your city was like. And so I think for the most part, we handled it pretty well.
And today we had our final Unified Command press mm-hmm. conference. They say we're not completely out of the woods yet, but mm-hmm. we're getting close to what normal used to be.
Right. Well, I don't think we'll ever be out of the proverbial virus woods. I mean, COVID-19 is here to stay. Mm-hmm. Just like the flu is here to stay, and all the other, SARS that we went through, and none of those things went away. They're here, and you just have to learn as a society how to deal with it. And it's listening to people talk about their vaccinations. We're already hearing that there'll probably be discussion about booster vaccinations and annual vaccinations. So it's, I would say it's good to think about the fact we're never going to be out of the virus woods. But now we've just been through one of the most severe ones since early in the 20th century, and we're going to learn how to live with this one too.
And what are you excited for about going forward?
Well, today was a council meeting, and just the excitement today of everything on the agenda tended to do with new opportunities. We even are having some tremendous discussions about some things we can do with parks and recreation, and that even in council today, seeing young people who were there for what I call open mic time, mm-hmm. young leaders in this community who are saying, hey, we're in business and we want to see the city do this. And we're beginning to see this energy about quality of place. And it's not just a slogan. We should be an outdoor recreation capital. There's no reason why Midland should simply be known as the oil and gas capital. You should be able to do a great oil and gas business here, but you can start to recruit young families here, because not just for a job, but as the school district turns around and ups its game, so to speak, we as a city can up our recreation game and our outdoor game. Because I've heard multiple companies tell me the two things that stand in the way of them recruiting talent is education and, to make a rhyme, recreation. They don't even say healthcare issues at the front anymore. They just say, can you give us a quality of life? So I'm really excited about some things that are cooking that we'll be talking about in the next few months, that the city's going to be able to see and say, okay, we're going to take our place among the outdoor cities, not only in Texas, but Arizona and other places.
And we have 9 new playgrounds, the animal shelter, mm-hmm. 2 new fire stations. How are those going to help play into that? Well,
all of it's a part of just being the city we're supposed to be. And I'm also encouraged by the mindset of council to not be reactive to simply the ups and downs of the economy, but to just have a steady mindset. We talked just a minute ago about choosing the middle ground. And we have to do the same thing. If the industry goes through another boom, well, we have to just stay our pace. We need to be, to use an old fable, we just need to be the tortoise and stop being the hare.
Yeah.
And just, if we just keep plodding along as a city, we'll all look back one day and go, regardless of what the industry does, we're a healthy community to do life and enjoy life and raise a family and be a shining star out in West Texas.
And the city can do as much as it can, but how can citizens get involved to help us get to that place?
Yeah, well, the most encouraging part is citizens, especially the younger generation I keep talking about. I talked about it in the State of Midland conversation we had last week. It's young people going to school board meetings. It's going to city council meetings. It's choosing to run for office or be on boards or be on commissions that we have, Parks and Recreation, or you mentioned the animal shelter, being on those different boards and applying for those boards. It sounds easy to get involved as I say it, but you're going to have to do some work. It takes time. You got to fill out applications. You're going to have to start going to meetings. We've got young people on Planning and Zoning Commission. So really, young people just have to make a decision. I'm going to sacrifice some time to be a part of it. There was a generation 30, 40 years ago that were in their 30s, and they were building this place called Midland, and it was back in the 80s and back in the 90s. And that young generation came here, decided to stay here and build a community. Well, now it's 30 or 40 years later. It's arguably a generation later. It's time for us to step up and say, okay, I'm not going to complain anymore unless I choose to get involved. And that your complaints really shouldn't even register unless you choose to get involved. And like you said, that's just going to involve getting on the city website, getting on the city Facebook page, asking questions, calling meetings, sending emails. And as you know, I think a lot of people think that our emails are read by somebody else, but every council member and the mayor, are working for nothing, but we get our emails. And I think I was looking at my emails this morning, and I have almost 9,000 emails saved in my short tenure already.
Yeah, you're like,
so,
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just, I looked at that again, and I thought, oh my goodness, 9,000. And that doesn't include, all the ones that are what you would call junk email from people trying to sell me stuff for the city. All those are deleted. But when you start thinking about the volume, we just need people to get involved and be ready to be a part of the answer.
And speaking of that, a lot of people don't realize that the mayor is almost like a volunteer position. Yeah. You also have a completely other full-time job that you do aside from that. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, every council member and the mayor are really volunteers. I don't mind saying that my exorbitant salary is $75 a month, and city council members are making a whopping $25 a month. And I think I'm not alone as one of those who gives that money away anyways. I've never cashed a check from the city, and it's always gone to a foundation I have to go into 501c3 work. And so my real day job is I started a consulting firm, and I travel throughout Texas and Oklahoma and work with businesses and boards of directors and independent entrepreneurs about leadership, board strategy, board structure, business planning. And so that keeps me busy. And then, like you guys are doing, I have a podcast called No Neutral Moments, and I think we're 73 episodes in now, and that's been something we've been doing for quite a while. So, and then I have other things I'm involved in that are not-for-profit issues. So I'm like other council members, I've got a lot of plates in the air, so to speak, and everybody's doing the same thing. They're trying to run a business. You got council members that have restaurants, that have oil and gas companies, that have training facilities. So we're all just like everybody else we serve. We are making a living and giving our time away.
And we want to learn a little bit more about you. So when we bring the other council members on as well, we're going to ask all of you these 10 fun fact questions.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yeah, as long as they're not a setup.
No, I think they're fun.
Okay.
They're just some fun.
All right.
Your favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that's my dad's favorite too. Your favorite place to eat in Midland?
Cancun Grill.
Favorite color?
Red.
If you could have one superpower, what would you choose?
Wow, that one's hard. One superpower, invisibility.
Are you a dog or cat person?
Dog.
Go-to karaoke song? If you were to sing karaoke, I don't know.
Well, actually, I sang in competitions, and
no way.
I sang. Yes, I competitively sang. It would probably
That's a fun
be
fact.
Don't Stop Believing.
Okay. Your favorite sports team?
Oklahoma Sooners.
Favorite TV show?
Not a TV guy, so my favorite TV show would have to be College Game Day when football's being played, and then anytime OU is playing on TV.
We'll take that.
Okay.
Your favorite type of music?
This one's going to get me in trouble. A mix of classic rock and heavy metal.
Okay. Last but not least,
Okay.
if you could have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Pizza.
Pizza. And from anywhere in particular or any kind?
I'm a pepperoni and jalapeno pepper guy,
Okay.
and I love them when they're brick oven. And so I had a pizza last night for dinner, and I had a pizza 2 nights ago for dinner. I'm batching it this week, so my wife supplied the frozen pizzas for me.
You're like, I can handle that.
I can
Pizza
handle that. I can handle that. So yeah, that pizza would be my deal. I love it.
Well, those are great fun facts. And now we're going to go to our last segment.
All right.
These are some questions that citizens submitted for you.
Okay. All right.
The first one is, could we see a public rail system from Midland to Odessa?
Not in any of our lifetimes. So no.
And the next question is, do we have an answer to the electricity situation for the summer?
Out of our hands. It's important. I think they understand. You know, I point of confession here. One of the worst things about the winter storm we had, one of the worst things was I never lost power. And so I told my wife, I said, turn off every light, because I know that half the citizens in this city thought I had a secret switch somewhere in the basement in the police department or the city office that I was controlling who got power, and we had no control over it. So I think it's hard for people to comprehend that in Midland we have no control over the power grid. There is no switchboard anywhere. So we're all going to be dependent upon ERCOT again for what could happen in the summer, which means it's going to be incumbent upon all of us to watch our energy usage just to protect so that we get the energy we need. It's a non-local issue. So unfortunately, there's not an answer.
And the next one, with the number of pedestrian vehicle accidents, do you see Midland getting more crosswalks?
It's an interesting question. The premise of the question is interesting. With the increasing number of pedestrian accidents, I don't really have the numbers to say whether that's true or not. But at the same time, I think we have plenty of crosswalks, but I also see this thing coming, just if this person's watching, every time we put in a ramp and a crosswalk, as many people complain about us putting a crosswalk in as like us putting a crosswalk in. I think the other part of that question is more important, which is we as a city learning to slow down.
Yes.
And pay attention. I have noticed when this economy ramps up, people are just in a big hurry and we're congested more so. And so I think it's going to be incumbent upon the city and industry to tell people, slow down, pay attention. And when things ramp up around here, it gets really tight. You know, I think you'll remember back in 2019, I remember the loop being just almost like a I-30 in Dallas. And then,
it was like avoided at all costs.
Yeah, exactly. Find another way to go. And so I think the better answer is not necessarily more crosswalks, but more caution from every citizen.
I agree
Not
with
texting when you're driving.
Yes.
I wish I could get like an honorary badge and ticket book from the police department, so I could just start pulling people over, and just so many people, you see them still texting, driving, doing something on their phone, and
it's almost, you see more people doing it than not nowadays.
Exactly. And even driving down the highway, Loop 250 or I-20, you want to look at people and pull them aside and just say, in a blink of an eye, this is going to be over.
Yeah, is it worth it?
It's not worth it. And so, yeah.
Next question. Will council meetings ever be moved to the evenings?
That's a great question. I think the time will come, probably in my first term. If I run for a second term, we'll see. But I think we need to consider at least an experiment in that regard. I know it's been tried before, and maybe try it once a month, like the first or second meeting of the month. It's an evening meeting. What people need to understand as well is, for us as council members, that's not much of an ask. It is for city staff. When you think about how many staff are involved in having to pull off a meeting, this is their job. And it's probably a good time, Erin, to say that one of the things people need to understand about the structure of city government is the best way to look at it is the council and the mayor are the board of directors and the chairman of the board for the company of the city. We don't run the city. We act as a board of directors elected by the city for sure. But the business is the city and city hall and the city managers and everybody else, like your job and those who are filming us. That's the company. And so it's not so much the council choosing to have those meetings because, again, we're technically volunteering. We're going to do what everybody else is doing in the city.
Yes.
But the company of the city has to make some changes. And I don't think it would be too fair for the company to say, hey, we need you to put in a 16-hour day on the second and fourth Tuesday without some adjustments. So there's more to it than just the simple, can we do an evening? And quite frankly, if we did them in the evenings, and we didn't have any more people than we have in the daytime, it'd be a quick experiment. In fact, that's another way of saying we wouldn't continue it.
Yeah. The next question.
And as a staff member, you're nodding your head.
I would much prefer at 10 a.m., but we'll do whatever the people want. The next question, you touched on it a little bit, but what was the biggest challenge you faced during COVID?
Well, I think that same answer is just navigating the middle. Listening to everybody who had a concern, from the doctors and the healthcare community to the citizens who had legitimate concerns, and not allowing myself to be pulled too heavily in one direction. So that lesson has stayed front and center for my mind. Is I told a group that was asking me the other day how you do this, and I said, well, you just have this mental picture of yourself being the fulcrum of a teeter-totter. And at any particular time, it depends on the size of the person on either side. I have to sort of move back and forth to keep this teeter-totter balanced. And I think that's really the role you have to take here.
And the last citizen question we have for you, any plans to combat the litter in Midland?
Actually, yes. Funny question, because I was thinking about that this morning.
Well, tell us.
I did Keep Midland Beautiful a couple of weeks ago, and we had over 100 people sign up for my team, and they didn't all show up, but we had a great showing. And I literally, driving down the loop this morning on the way to council meeting, I thought, I'm going to seriously consider calling us to an entire summer of focusing on let's clean up Midland. And it'd just be an entire summer-long campaign. Again, I don't know if I have to take this around to council or what, but just really coming from the mayor's office. I say office, I don't even have an office. And the city council to just say, we want to encourage people all summer. Let's clean this place up and see if we can reinstill this mindset of not just keep Midland Beautiful a couple of weeks out of the year, but let's focus on it for an entire 3 months. So great question. Was thinking about it this morning, and I don't think it'll be a heavy lift. We just have to start getting the messaging out.
And everyone needs to do their part.
Yeah, that's the funny part. I used to get these phone calls all the time. People kind of learned when I was on the radio on Wednesday mornings after council meetings, I'd get probably a call a week. What are you going to do about the trash? And my answer was always the same. Well, I'm going to ask you to get a trash bag and go pick it up. And really, that's the answer. It's not the city staff's place to pick it up, quite frankly, because we can't employ enough people to do that, nor should we. It should be the citizens treasuring the place they live enough to do the simple things. I was walking behind a couple downtown the other day, and they took a stick of gum out and put it in their mouth, and they just threw the wrapper on the ground. And so, I'm about 50 yards behind them, and I didn't say anything. I just picked it up, and so that's really, the solution is just pick it up. And if we start doing that, eventually the peer pressure, compare it to mask peer pressure, right? Like you can be somewhere and you're not required to wear a mask, but you still kind of get this sense that people are looking at you, yes, and you're like, they want me to wear a mask. We need that kind of peer pressure about just picking up trash. That I'm always thinking someone's watching me and they expect me to pick up trash. So I think we can change that mindset.
And is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want the citizens to know?
Well, I think the only thing I would add is when we go back to COVID, the year we've just had, you can't say enough. Well, we didn't talk about the riot issues we had. We had the communist protesters here. We had the migrant village here. Our city staff, our police department, our fire personnel have all done an incredible job. It has been an incredible year to see these people who have been on the front lines, again, from City Hall to the thin blue line to the fire department. We haven't missed a beat. And in fact, we've probably exceeded expectations. And so I think we can't leave the podcast without saying thanks to all those people involved. Yourself, I mean, when you became PIO, I don't think you ever thought, I'm looking forward to being PIO during a pandemic. And so in the press releases we had to do and the videos we had to do. So everybody has had an experience that when we get 10 years down the road, we'll still be talking about that year. Right?
Oh, definitely.
And what life was like pre-COVID, what life is like post-COVID. And it will be, I remember where I was on 9/11. I remember where I was in Oklahoma City when the Murrah Federal Building blew up. And I was in Oklahoma City. I was right next to it. And so this is going to be a defining time for us. And I had a mentor tell me the other day, he said, let's just make sure we don't come out of this and act like nothing happened. There's a lot of lessons for us to learn about caring for one another and watching out for one another and being patient with one another. So I hope that as well as honoring the people who did more above and beyond what they had to do, our medical community, all of them, our city did an amazing job. This city of Midland did an incredible job of responding to a historical crisis, and it makes you even more proud to be here.
Let's touch on that before we go. Midland always rises to the occasion, but in this past year and a half, it's been more so than ever before, probably. What is it like to be mayor and see all of that happen?
Well, I would say this phrase often. Midlanders are usually slow to a fight. We're not looking for a fight. We just want to do life. We're like I used to call this place Mayberry on speed. I mean, we just want to do our life. We want to go to work. We want to go to our kids' ball games. And so a couple of months, I think our community was still trying to figure out, is this COVID thing real? But again, slow to a fight, but when we decide the fight's worth it, nobody fights like Midland does. And really the basin, Odessa, Midland, nobody fights like we do. And nobody tells us what to do. And we see the issue and we fight. And Midlanders do that. And you just can't disagree with that, with what you saw. Even people who just were the most belligerent about this, I hate this COVID thing. They still had a mask in their pocket, and then they still walked up to the grocery store and said, okay, and put their mask on. There's always the 10% who are never going to do anything. They're still texting and driving, right? And but the majority said, okay, I got it. And here we are.
Mayor Payton, thank you.
You're welcome.
Everyone, that concludes our first episode of My Midland. I'm Erin Bailey, the Public Information Officer, and we'll see you next time.